Hello folks, I hope you're having a great day today. Today I want to take a look at the third of the sort of 5 cycle stories that I just read earlier today. I'm recording them all sitting back to back for you, but I'm going to publish them probably in a few weeks from each other in order to give you time to go back and read it. But this is in the Zothique cycle by Clark Ashton Smith. Clark Ashton Smith is one of the big writers during the era for numerous publications, particularly Weird Tales, along with H.P. Lovecraft, who wrote the Cthulhu mythos and other major horror stories. And Robert E. Howard, who was big known for these famous fantasy characters like Kull the Conqueror or Conan the Barbarian. And he was kind of the third of those. And he creates the worlds. And this world, Zothique, is kind of set in the far future. And the Zothique world here is basically, because it's in the far future, magic is back, the old gods are back, and so forth. And so he has a number of these stories. Now, he has set these all in different places at different times. He doesn't have the same characters, the same people, the same city even. Zothique is this large continent. That's the only one that's left on the planet as it gets closer to the end. And everybody here is out for themselves, and they're mostly evil. There's actually one counterexample that we'll actually get to near the end of this. It's going to be the end of my 5th of the stories that I read today, but that's not this one. This one, what I want to do is take a look at the Weaver in the Vault. Now, the Weaver in the Vault is very similar to other stories, and in fact the next story, the Tomb Spawn, is also very similar to other stories too. And I don't think that the Weaver in the Vault is particularly Zothique. I do think that some of the previous stories feel more Zothique, and some of the later stories will feel more Zothique. But I think this one could legitimately be just kind of taken out and put into pretty much any sort of a fantasy sort of story, and it'll be fine. The narrative works, and so forth. Basically, you're going to have this emperor who's married himself to this dark sorceress who wants to get the mummy of one of the greatest people who started the lineage that this emperor is descended from. So he has sent out 3 of his most loyal henchmen to go to the abandoned sort of crypts in this city that was stopped, that was their initial city that their empire started in, but because of an earthquake, they're no longer there anymore. And so these 3 of these henchmen are going to go back there, but the ruins of these sort of dark necropolyptic areas are considered to be dark, necromantic. You don't want to go there. People who go there die. Nobody's gone there for hundreds of years. The last people who were sent by the king also never came back, and that was hundreds of years ago. But these 3 henchmen, they say, hey, look, we're probably the only 3 people in the entire empire who's willing to actually go in there. So we understand why we're being sent. We're the only ones brave enough or stupid enough to go in there. So these 3 henchmen are going to go in, and their goal is to penetrate the area around it and to find whatever remains of the mummy. And they have this sarcophagus with them, so whatever is left after thousands and thousands of years, they're going to take back to the kingdom and this emperor and his new bride with the remains of this powerful mummy. They believe it's going to be for her making some various nasty potions and magic and so forth that she can use to enhance it, because he was one of the strongest, sort of sorcerers of his day. So, and because he was the founder of sort of the dynasty that her husband now is kind of running, there's also probably going to be some sort of magical enhancements or something that may come about. So they have these sort of reasons for why they think she wants it, but they're disgusted by it, but they're not going to be too bothered by it. They're still going to go try to penetrate the vaults and grab this guy's remains, no matter what they're coming across. Actually, at the beginning, they argue as to whether they should actually do this or not, but they say, hey, look, ultimately they decided to do it because they figure out that them going into the vaults and then coming back out and giving it to them is probably less likely to get them killed, because then they won't be chased than if they just kind of escaped and ran off, because they'll get chased down, they'll be killed by their king, and they're not magic users or anything like that. They're sorcerers, wizards, necromancers that could find them and hunt them down, right? So they understand that, so they're not going to be able to easily escape. So they basically are going to penetrate the vault and try to find out what's happening. They're going to arrive on the scene, and after some early things, they're going to arrive in the vault, and at the first crypt, they're going to see that the mummy, and this is not the mummy they're looking for, but the first one, there's no body at all, no mummy, nothing that's there. And the only thing that's there are the sort of sacred garments, like the crown and so forth, that was on the mummy, who was previously there in the sort of in the vaults that are down there for the royalty. So again, they're going to be penetrating it, and the first mummy is missing except for the raiments and so forth. And they're going to find out that more and more are missing too. Ultimately, they're going to find the vault that has the person that they're going to be sent to, and guess what? Surprise, surprise. it's missing its mummy too. And that's about halfway through the story, and again, I'm going to stop there. This is actually a very short story. It's like 9 pages in my book here, so it's not very long. I've only got you 4.5 pages in, and I'm going to call it on that because, again, I don't want to take too much of your time. I want you to go read it and take a look, and if you're interested in it, you can go take a look at it. But again, it's exploring the vaults of a long lost ancestor and the mummies and so forth. It's kind of something that could be set in many different sort of fantasy worlds, or in other fantasy worlds by Clark Ashton Smith. So I don't think it's uniquely Zothican, like I think the previous story, The Voyage of King Edoran, or the Dark Edolan, or something like that would be, or Island of the Torturers, or something like that. I do think those are very, very strongly that world building. But I don't think that's the case here. There is still some world building, but it's lesser, and so forth. It's just in this dark crypt. I think you could kind of substitute it for others. But I do think that it has an amazing end to it. And I think there's this literary end that Clark Ashton Smith has to this story that I think works really well and suits the pulp era very well too. So feel free to check it out. It's written in the early 30s. Clark Ashton Smith, the body of his sort of fiction came out from 30 to 35. He was a writer of lots of other things too. There are a number of places that you will have some of the stuff that's been serialized, so if you want to pick them up and so forth, I'll link you below to the Zothique cycle that he has written. So if you're interested in it, you can pick that up over on Amazon. So have you read this story or the other stories in the Zothique cycle? I'd love to talk to you more about that. Did you like them and so forth? What did you think of this one? Do you think, like me, it's less Zothique than and more just kind of a generic, strong fantasy story? Or if not, what did you think about the end and the actual, it's in the title, so the actual Weaver in the Vault and so forth. And I'd be happy to talk with you about that more. If you enjoyed this, feel free to hit the subscribe button. There's going to be so many more these sorts of reviews and analyses videos of classics that are in the horror, science fiction, and fantasy genres, just like these from the 30s, and so forth. And hey, if you spend some time with me watching this video, I want to thank you so much, because we all have such busy days and such busy lives. So the fact that you spent this with me, man, it's really humbling, so I appreciate that. So once again, thanks.